Test 1, 2, 3. gladly step in for her. So the next on our agenda is approval of the minutes. Have everyone had an opportunity to look at the minutes? All right. All right, it's been moved and second. All those in favor of approval of minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by nay. Motion passes. Then we will move into our agenda. Ashley, you want to come on up and welcome to your first HR board committee.
Thank you all so much.
Now, everyone has been introduced to Ashley, haven't we?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, hello, I'm Ashley Ridgway Washington. I am the new CHRO, and I am delighted to be here. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So I'll share with you people and culture updates. Today is my 31st day, so I've been here all of 30 days. And so as we look forward to the next fiscal year, really what I'd like to do is kind of set the stage for some of the things we've done this year, but then more forward-looking, how we expect to prioritize the work of supporting our associates going forward. I'd like to start by saying that over the last 30 days, I've really reflected on much of what I learned during the interview process and confirmed that what I believed was true, which is that JPS cares. And it is foundational to the way we provide care, to the way we engage with our employees, and kind of that foundational commitment really does ring true in every hall and every corridor of the organization. And so as I continue to orient in this role and build a new team and really lean into the priorities that we need to kind of undertake to really accelerate people and culture at JPS, I'm both humbled and grateful. And the story that I'm about to share with you all is of Mr. Jamil Ahmad, and I think it really, for me, grounded me in the purpose of my work. I am here so that he can be here and provide care to our patients, and that is really, for me, an anchor about how we will proceed going forward. And so I'd like to share this story with you about him. And he is what we call a boomeranger. It means he was at JPS, he left and came back. But the story of how he came back to us is one that I think everybody should hear, but I couldn't let the HR committee miss. So and tee that up.
I'll introduce my coworkers as my secretaries, and you'll see the eyes rolling at the same time. Renee, Missy, and Stacy, they're three of my secretaries, and they're basically here to tend to all of my needs. And some of my wonderful coworkers I'm very fortunate to work with. I absolutely love working at JPS. I love the people, and I just love the ability to be able to serve our patients. One of the reasons that many of us are here, because it's very rewarding to be able to help people. It's a microprocessor leg, so it senses angles, velocities, when there's weight on it, when there's not. It knows when to lock out, when to release. So it makes it easier to walk, and sometimes it tightens up when it senses that I might be falling and keeps me from falling. I was gone for essentially about 22 months. I usually just tell people 2 years. I left to have some routine knee surgery done. While I was recovering, unfortunately, I fell. I tore everything in my knee, all the ligaments, tendons, muscles. I got an infection, and only way to get rid of the infection was to amputate the leg and remove the hardware. Just seeing that people were happy to see me back. The first few days, it was almost a non-stop hug session for me, and just being welcoming and encouraging, that gave me a great deal of motivation to continue to work harder, and made me realize that I absolutely did the right thing by making the decision to come back. When I see patients that are despondent, in fact, I had another one this morning who had an amputation just yesterday below the knee, but this patient was saying that, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I just told him, you can do this. You will get better. What's important is just taking care of the people that come in for help.
That's moving.
Powerful story. And if that does not anchor the work that we do in HR committee, I don't know what else will. I think, as I think about it, it is It speaks to the power of transformation, and when you are at the intersection of resilience and support, associates can do anything. And so we'll talk a little bit now about healthcare workforce trends. I think as we kind of reflect on the 2023 fiscal year and kind of where we've come, both as a system and organization in terms of continue to gain momentum and steam after COVID, right? Because we are still bouncing back from that. The question then becomes, is it just us? And I think that's a question that everybody with a critical eye should ask, right? And I would submit to you it's not, that healthcare as a workforce, global healthcare, and then even beyond that, the global workforce is still continuing to rebound, and workers are still continuing to regain footing behind all that happened for the last couple of years. And so as we think about trends internal to the organization, they really do align nicely with what we're seeing external to the organization, which is that there's a renewed focus on talent attraction and retention, a continued commitment with engagement, and continued support around wellness, resilience, and mental fitness. It is important. I think it is foundational to a workforce that really can provide best-in-class care to patients. So I'll share a little bit about that. So just looking at our metrics from the year past, really what I would like to highlight is the work we've done around retention. And so we spent a lot of time focusing on talent attraction, and we know that we continue to see shortages in all clinical roles as it relates to attraction. And so we are doubling down on attraction. We continue to grow and develop new strategies. We are bolstering our strategy and recruitment and doing some work there. But I'd like to tell our story around retention because we've really done some impressive work over the last year or two. So in 2022 to 2023 year to date, we've reduced voluntary turnover by about 9%. Now that's not perfect, but it is a measurable increase. We still have work to do to identify, what is most important to our employees and how we continue to keep them engaged and growing at JPS, but we continue to see reduction. I've just got to sing the praises as it relates to nursing contractors and agency staff reduction of Jill Farrell's team. They've seen over a 60% reduction since January in 2023. So we started the year with over 233 agency staff, and we are down now, I think, even below this reporting. I believe when I looked at the August numbers which just came out, we're even down below that. And so continuing to reduce agency costs. Yep.
We're below 40.
Oh,
All
wow.
right, all right. That is so hard to do.
And I don't think, we don't have any in the ICUs, right?
We have none in the ICU. Really, the emergency department remains the most challenging area. The critical care is out, ICU and our PCU, so. yeah.
All right.
Jill, what percentage of that 90 does that represent the overall total nursing population?
I'm wondering if that includes also, and Ashley can correct me, we have other contractors
Yes.
too, like in imaging and radiology, so there may be some other numbers that are calculated into our
Yes.
overall agency number.
Okay.
That's correct.
Because there's not many contractors in behavioral health or community health, there's just a couple of few.
I see.
And so that number's still very low for nursing overall.
Okay.
Excellent work there. And I think not only have they reduced, they have done a phenomenal job of converting people in-house. Nursing and HR have really engaged in partnership to find new and innovative ways to attract talent. And so we've done a great job. And so I just have to sing their praises because it speaks to the work that has been done even before I arrived here.
Ashley, can you read the descriptions of the three colors in the bar chart?
Yes, and so the green is voluntary terms, and the orange is involuntary terms, and the blue, which is not on the screen but I have here, is hires. It's hires. And so you will find that I will always tend to focus on voluntary turnover because it generally will indicate there was potentially regrettable attrition. And we want to abate regrettable attrition and really focus on retaining talent. We would prefer to, because we know in this market, it is certainly more expensive to replace good talent. And when you have a culture as rich as JPS, that cultural dynamic is so important to the continuing the legacy and richness of the organization.
So the green is the voluntary,
Green is voluntary.
and that's dropped from Last year?
So 391, I believe, is what we had last year. Year-to-date, we are at, I think, 330, and so we are trending. And I have no indications for this last quarter that we are beyond that trend. So we're trending at about 9% reduction
Oh,
year over year.
well, I've got it on my screen now, so.
Let me ask you a question,
Lonnie, since you're off.
when we look at our employee population here, knowing that we have competitors throughout the county,
All right.
do we look at, or have we looked at how we compare with what we offer an employee to come to work for us versus what the other institutions offer?
Yes, so actually, we are in the middle now of a market assessment, and so that market assessment will conclude in the next couple of months. So that is something on the non-executive side that should be happening about every 2 to 3 years. Now, I cannot say how it happened historically, but from my perspective, my strategy will be to do a couple of things. To look at market every couple of years, but also to continue to stay engaged with our competitors. I have relationships with most of the CHROs in the Dallas-Fort Worth market, and there is a level of transparency. Of course, we're competitors, so it's not full transparency, but there is a level of clarity around what's being offered. I will tell you, I view that strategy is really germane to attracting talent, but every single study out there will tell you that once we bring people into the organization, while keeping them competitive is very important, it is also important that they understand how they grow, that they feel a connection to the work that they're doing every day, that they work for a leader who is both leaning into them as a human and as an employee, and that they have the ability to be in a working environment where the behaviors are demonstrable, where the culture is not what we have on the wall, but what's walking through the halls. And so from my perspective, those strategies run in parallel, and I'll share a little bit more about that.
There are two things I do
Sure.
when I go to my doctor appointments and specialist appointments. I ask two questions. One question is what church you attend, and the other is where do you work? And because I'm asking, have you considered JPS? I'm always doing, because I just hear how we, over time, because we were short, and so I'm always trying to recruit to come to JPS. So I'll get your card so I can hand them out to everybody.
Absolutely. Our employees are they are a walking billboard, and so that's why those retention measures are so important. So we've seen significant improvement, very much like on the employee side, on the clinician and APP side. And so we see year over the year clinician terms and conversions over to PRN have steadily reduced from 45 total events in 2021 to now down to 36. And we see similarly as it relates to hires versus terms, again, we continue to see sustained reductions in bleeding, for lack of better words, or in turnover. So it speaks to much of the work we've done from a strategy perspective in terms of identifying where we had compensation gaps, but it also speaks to the fact that our employees like to work at JPS, and they are staying at a higher rate now than they were 2 years ago. So that is a promising sign. Again, nothing's ever perfect. We've got work to do, and we've got some strategies in place to improve that, but it is positive. The trends are positive, and the work that the team has done really does speak to that.
Actually, how is our physician vacancy rate at a claim?
So I do not have that metric offhand, but I can get back to you and get it.
Thank you. That's been a challenge.
Yeah, we're actually doing much better. In fact, we have quite a few providers that will be starting, I believe, in October through the end of the year.
Okay.
So we have filled a number of those vacancies.
In this presentation is a clinician, does that include the APPs or?
It does. The acclaimed population.
Right.
So as we talk about retention, and as we show that we have continued to reduce retention, one of the most important tools that we have to understand what is important to our employees is our associate engagement, our employee engagement survey. We are in that cycle now, and I am just overjoyed at the efforts that the team have undertaken to make sure that all of our employees were prepared and excited and energized around the survey. And I am happy to share that as of the fourth day of the survey, as of about 11:30 a.m., 72% of our employees have participated. We are trending ahead of ourselves by about 4 days now.
That's great.
And so, similarly, on the clinician side, we've had about 26% of them to respond, and so we're working with them closely because we know some of them are not here every day. And so very just overjoyed to see that employees are willing to talk to us. One of the best marks for understanding whether employees are engaged or disengaged starts with whether they will even respond to the survey, right? Which says that they have faith that we will take their feedback, listen actively, and then action on that. A bit of what I want to kind of share with you next is around how we performed last year, what's happening in the market beyond us, and what we're hoping for this year. So we had gains last year. I think in 2021, we scored somewhere in the neighborhood of 4.01, I believe, and then last year, and then the next year 4.03, and so then last year we were at 4.08, which was a 0.04 increase. Keeping in mind that, again, the workforce in general has seen significant declines in engagement over the last 3 years. We are starting to see some flattening of that in the global workforce, but again, healthcare continues to be a tough environment to see upward trends in engagement. With that being said, JPS performed very well against Gallup competitors in the healthcare sector last year. And so we can look forward to continuing to see growth. Now, I will tell you, I'm a pragmatist, as you all will get to know me. I am certainly sure that employees are prepared to answer questions truthfully. They understand it's confidential. They're excited about it. But I will also say to you that what we do inside these walls are not the only things that impact engagement. And so we have to factor in that the global workforce continues to still real while running in parallel to listen to our employees and create actionable plans that will demonstrate our responsiveness and our commitment to making sure that they come to a work environment where they feel engaged, they feel a sense of pride and ownership in their work, they understand how what they do rolls up to the bigger strategy, and they feel like they can grow and be rewarded and recognized on par with their work. So just want to share with you a little bit of the planning that we did and some of the fun that we had. I think it's important for the board to see and the committee to see how our employees are engaging in some of this work. And so one of the things we did was we worked with our employees to make sure that they understood the survey questions. And one of our questions really centers around friends at work. How do you have someone that you can talk to, that you can escalate with, or that you can bounce something off of? And so this is demonstrative of that. This is our best friend, our BFF challenge. And so you see lots of pictures there of employees and kind of their crew, for lack of better words, as we prepared for the survey. Here are some of the activations. One of the things that we really looked at, and I came in really fairly late into the survey cycle in terms of planning, but I wanted to make the survey as accessible as possible. And so some of the enhancements that we made this year is we added QR codes everywhere. People have the ability to scan a QR code, put their IMPL ID in, and respond to the survey, both on the employee and the clinician side. Similarly, we sent out text messages for those who were signed up to say, hey, take your survey, and they were able to click a link and go directly to the survey, in addition to those more traditional modalities that we've used to get the survey out. We are rewarding folks with healthy snacks and the opportunities to win some really cool prizes, but ultimately, all of this is so that we can gather feedback from our employees that we can action on. Lots of cool prizes, lots of fun activations, but the richness is that we get to listen to employees and then action on it. So the next thing I really want to lean into is how we are faring as it relates to wellness and resilience. So we have a bevy of very substantive support for our employees to make sure that they are prepared, mentally well and mentally fit, physically fit to do their job and provide care for patients. We recognize that caregiving can sometimes be heavy. Although it is a passion, it can also be a labor of love. And so some of our signature offerings, we like to delve into those a little bit more and highlight for you. We have both EAP internal to this organization, so a group of credentialed counselors who can provide reactive counseling for folks and do proactive programming. In addition to that, we have CompPsych, which is a 24/7 wraparound EAP service that will provide then an extra layer of EAP for our employees, inclusive of things from traditional counseling to financial wellness and planning, to even things around finding care for their children and so on and so forth. And so our EAP is highly utilized both internally and with our wraparound program, and our employees are big adopters of the EAP strategy. I also like to highlight Schwartz Rounds. So Schwartz Rounds were actually originated at Boston General Hospital. There was a 40-year-old healthcare attorney who died of cancer, and he was so impressed by the compassionate care of his staff that he left an endowment to start something called Schwartz Rounds. And Schwartz Rounds is a program that allows for our employees to come to a psychologically safe, confidential space as a group and talk through the traumas and sometimes the weight of providing care. It is not rounding for learning. It is rounding just to be able to have vulnerable conversation. And it is something that happens on a regular cadence. We have 2 offerings of it. It's led by Leanne Franklin, our spiritual care leader, and it is very well attended and adopted to give our providers and our caregivers just an outlet to be able to speak candidly about how it is to provide care in an environment where, things happen. People leave us and the weight of that. So I love that program. It's actually my favorite so far. We are in our Blessing of the Hand season, which is really very ceremonial, but employees really love it. It is when Leanne and her staff go around and just offer blessings of gratitude for those who are providing care to patients. Move Spring I really like because we often don't think of the hidden benefits, and they're not really hidden, but the benefits of moving and getting engaged. And Move Spring really helps our employees to monetize movement. And so what Move Spring allows is for employees in a current plan year to earn up to $500 to then get the next plan year from attending wellness and fitness education, activations, and doing their biometric screening. And so they can put that in their HSA, or they can actually have that money deposited over the course of the next plan year. And so it's a wonderful program that lets employees kind of incentivize movement and so on, and lets them actually see the tangible benefits of that. In addition to that, we have lots of other kinds of competitions where prizes and things are won. I'd also like to highlight We Care. We Care is a relatively new program. It, again, is a wraparound service that helps families connect to both child care and adult caregiving support. It has discounts and a concierge service that will help people to find both childcare facilities, but maybe more niche babysitter kinds of services. It also offers some options for some fairly, I'd say, not only affordable, but different payment plan arrangements that can be better for employees who may have be saddling the burden of significant daycare expenses, and then a host of other learning resources that we provide on a regular basis. But all of this to say that we recognize that in order to pour out, they can't pour from an empty cup. Our employees cannot be pouring from an empty cup. And so we have to do the work of ensuring that they have the resources and support that they need to be mentally fit and resilient to do the work. And we know that mental fitness and resilience is ultimately a key driver of engagement and retention.
So Ashley, on that last point you just made for We Care and connecting to daycare, child services, where would you rank childcare when it comes to the importance of our staff's ability to be retained by JPS, come to work, stay healthy? Where would you say that falls?
So I'll be honest, I don't know, because I've not been here long enough to assess that. But what I will say is that historically, I have not seen that be in this environment in the top 10.
Okay.
What I resoundingly hear is that folks want to come to work in a department where they know what they're going to do. They have the tools, which I've not gotten feedback that we don't. But the number one driver of retention and people's willingness to stay is their experience with their leader. That is the number one driver of retention. And so one of my signature strategies for 2024 is around leadership development and how we continue to invest and upskill our leaders to make sure that they have the emotional intelligence and the skill sets to be able to manage in a difficult healthcare environment. We don't always talk about it, but leaders are employees too, right? And so how do we prepare them to lead the charge and model the way? And so statistically speaking, leadership is the number one driver of retention.
Great, thank you.
The Swartz rounding,
Yes,
I think it's powerful.
I do too.
Yeah. It's something that I would love to sit in on. I think about my own profession, something like that would be a plus. Wow.
You're going to have some extra time. It sounds like a volunteer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe from time to time, we also have families come and speak and share stories and various folks. So we'll figure out how to get you plugged in. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. So I'd actually like to just.
For the board.
Yes, George for board. CEO, I know. Jill, do you want to speak at all around the childcare? Because you do have the largest number of employees that are of childbearing age.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with, it's something we hear about, but I would agree with Ashley that it's not definitely in the top 10. I think who you work for, I think right now with inflation, pay is still important to people. It's still in that top list, pay and benefits. And so you would think of childcare as being a benefit. I would also say that too, our entire workforce is not childbearing age either. And so that's still kind of a limited resource. What's great about We Care though, it includes also, your parents, right? My parents.
Yeah.
You can provide, they provide resources and access to those sort of services too. So actually We Care is more meaningful because it's more robust and it really includes every single employee in some way, besides really having that narrow, scope of only for childcare.
That's great.
So how does We Care work?
So it's a concierge service. You call in, and there's also a platform. So there's a couple of parts. You log in, there's a platform, and it has all of the discounts and partnerships they have. It allows you to take virtual tours of all of their partner facilities. But then there's also this concierge service that allows you to essentially talk to a counselor, describe your needs. So when do you need childcare or a caregiver? What shift do you work? And then they help to curate a list of solutions that would work for your life, which is what I think is the most powerful, right? Because I have actually implemented a Bright Horizons program and several others in my career. And they are pretty much, you just go in and do the search yourself and you're having to do all the digging in this big, vast kind of portal. We Care is a lot more personalized in that it listens to what you need and provides you with then a curated response based on what you've articulated as your needs. And then you can go back and say, yeah, this didn't work or this did work. It also has some resources in there for like vetted babysitters. So like a portal that you can, if you need an ad hoc kind of thing, and I believe they're background checked and vetted so that you can select somebody with some assurance that they're not, untoward.
Yeah, I think that's also an important feature, the on-demand part, because that's really the childcare need that comes up unexpected when you have a sick kid at home. And so having the ability to access some childcare on demand to come into your home to take care of your child is really, better than a daycare, because usually you can't take your child to a daycare when they're ill.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you might have some board members that like to travel around with, is it Reverend Franklin that does the Schwartz rounding also?
So Leanne, she leads, so she's our executive director of spiritual care, so she leads that.
And she does the blessing of the hands and the Schwartz round. I mean, I'm like the pastor, I'd kind of like to to participate if it's appropriate, one day.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get you connected.
Good idea.
So as I conclude, I'd like to just share at a high level with you my philosophy around how we curate a working environment that really does stand to not only engage and retain top talent, but to attract it. I worked at Amazon and I learned lots of things, not much about people and culture, but I did learn a lot because they are logistical geniuses. And they say a phrase there that really stuck with me. They said, built in is always better than bolted on. And so what my vision is for how I will lead this department is that we will build in engagement and inclusion and all of the components and behaviors of an engaged workforce. We won't bolt it on. And so what you will see is partnership in the business. We will be business partners. We will understand the business and we will be working with the business to build people and culture into every part of our overall strategy. Because what we recognize is that Peter Drucker wasn't crazy when he said that people were the last competitive advantage in business. He got it right. It's still right. And so what I plan to launch in 2024 is the We Care kind of ideology, which is that we are fostering a working environment that promotes curiosity, accountability, respect, and excellence. And it will be foundational to the work that we undertake as long as I'm at the helm. All right. Any additional questions? All
Good
right.
job, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate the
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right. All right. And I think next we have you up, Dr. Duncan. for-
Actually, Jill's going to
Oh.
present, so.
Okay.
It's been a little while since we reported where we
Yeah.
are sitting with our AIP goals. It's usually the COO that gives that report. I do want to thank my team that when Bill Masterton left the position of COO, that our team really picked up a lot of that work, and Jill has really stepped in on the hospital operations and keeping things going. So she has been the owner of those goals, and I'm going to allow her to present that.
Right.
Well, we are coming to the close of our AIP goals for fiscal year '23, and so we are finishing up, but I will go through the various goals that we selected a year ago or so. As you know, these goals are derived from our strategic plan. Of course, our patients are at the center of what we do. Whoops, Behavioral health inpatient area, as well as our emergency department. Those two areas have made statistically significant improvement over this fiscal year. I think the ED probably has a lot to do with left without being seen and some of the process improvements and leadership strategies that we've had there. And then, of course, Zelia Baugh and her team in behavioral health have also done a great job in the inpatient area. 30-day readmission, boy, this is a challenging one. This is a very complicated goal, and obviously we're not meeting this particular metric. Dr. Carla Pudi spoke to this particular goal at Quality Committee recently, and as you know, we worked really hard on another project that really impacted this goal around getting patients classified in appropriate statuses, whether that was observation or inpatient, which then affected our denominator that affected this goal. This also is a challenging goal because it's not a one-year goal. This is a long-term goal. Looking at why patients readmit it's not an easy button. It's not one thing that you can do to affect this goal. What I can say, though, is we're in the process of launching a multi-visit patient program, otherwise known as the MVP program, looking at those high utilizers. And so we've identified approximately 140, 150 patients who come to our emergency department at least 4 times in a year to try to determine what are those reasons why they're coming and try to be strategic in identifying how we can prevent them coming to the emergency department, how we can keep them well, how we can intervene from a social determinants of health perspective to get the care that they need in advance of seeking out the emergency department. So again, I will say too, we have also had our statistician look at this goal and try to do some sort of correction factor to see where will we be. And actually we're doing pretty well when you do the correction factor based on the work that we've done for inpatient and observation patient statuses. So
Jill, on average, and this may be a number you need to get and don't have off the top of your head, but to what extent are our frequent flyers attached to primary care physicians?
Yeah, I don't have that, and sometimes you can be attached but not be active in seeking out your primary care provider, or you may no-show visits. And so really it's getting back to why is that? What can we do to intervene to make them successful, to either understand and educate? Transportation may be an issue for their appointment, things like that. And so that's why it's so multi-layered. Access is not just the only factor, if you will.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, so the next one is reimagine facility supplier diversity spend. We are doing well in this area, and a lot of that is around our master facility plan and our bond projects. And so we are exceeding target, and hopefully we will finish at stretch. That's what our hope is. But right now we're doing well based on where we ended up last year. Ashley just spent a lot of time talking about employee engagement and clinician engagement, and we know nothing is possible without an engaged workforce. And so looking forward to seeing what those scores are. Super excited with already the engagement that we're seeing, as well as just the ease at which our employees and clinicians are able to do the survey this year as well. And then, of course, break-even net operating margin is our AIP trigger. I will also share with you, we already have teams now working on our 24 goals, proposals for consideration. And so we have several teams actively looking at, what our goals will be for next fiscal year.
And you all have the flexibility to look at these individually every year and change them? Create new ones, for example?
We can, yeah. I think you have some standard ones that'll always, obviously patient experience, employee engagement, those are pretty standard. When you look around, 30-day readmissions or population health goals, I think, there's a lot of opportunities or a lot of things that you could look at there. As well as reimagine facilities. We'll spend a lot of time talking about some of the opportunities we have from a technology and access standpoint, and so those would be some additional considerations as well that we're all reviewing and looking at, what could be for next year.
This will be our first year in which the team comes together with multiple goals that we'll begin to look at, align with our strategy, where we're going. Looking, and I think you've brought this up a number of times, kind of, we know that these are not often just one-year goals, so especially around population health. So how do we now set that metric up that really speaks about ongoing work with a 3-year end goal or a 5-year end goal? So there's a lot more of that conversation that's going on this week.
And it speaks to broader issues that have been highlighted for a long time. And I mentioned this earlier, one of the Blue Ribbon Committee observations back in 2018 was that we've got to be more innovative and creative about applying technology. Not just in terms of management of medical records, but in terms of patient handling and data. And so some of that does fold into some of these larger community observations and metrics. And so to the extent that we master or at least achieve a certain level, like we're doing great on supplier diversity spend, and we should keep monitoring that, but maybe we backfill now with some new ones.
Absolutely.
That begin to focus on some of those needs that we focus on a long time.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, that's great.
So is the triggers and the metrics set by the board? Do we set this every year?
Yeah, we approve them. Staff has been developing.
We actually bring those forward.
And when do we do that? For the next year, the year that's starting?
So once these are resolved out, was one of the reasons we did our engagement survey a little bit earlier this year, so that we can get as close to the end of the fiscal year to come back to the board to let you know where we ended with our results. And so then you actually approve the plan per se, kind of for the payout part of this. It's varied as to when we present the new goals for the next fiscal year. Again, we are trying to back into it and get it as closer to the beginning of that fiscal year so we have opportunity to start working on it much earlier. So we will be meeting towards mid or late September to make some decisions. So we'll probably bring it back to HR committee in November.
Yeah. And part of that too is like for patient experience, there's a lag time in getting those results back. So it's hard to set target threshold stretch until we have kind of our end of, truly end of year numbers and results.
And Blake, when they bring those back, the board either says or can give some input on adding and we can make some recommendations while they're working on it. If there's something specific that, you are concerned with, then asking, to see if that's a part of it. We have adequate time because they come, they present, we discuss. We don't usually approve them that first time anyway.
Okay.
There's a lot of discussion go into that before we approve it.
Well, and I've spoken before about wanting to change our trigger. We're going to need to eliminate ad valorem taxes from the formula as the trigger, but I also think the overall metrics should be focused on financials and driving us financially to improve our situation constantly. So I would like to, at the appropriate time, start those discussions so we're not trying to make a decision the same day we're deliberating.
Yeah, I would say that if you make improvements in many of these goals, you're making financial improvements. If your staff is more engaged, if your patient experience is higher, if you're improving your process, as to how your throughput is and you're, getting patients out quicker, all of those things do translate to a positive financial. So I hear what you're saying, but I think all this work that goes on throughout the hospital is really with the goal to improve outcomes and also to improve the financial of the organization.
Blake, and I'm asking the Finance Committee to set up some goals for that Finance Committee, because some of the things that you're asking about is not something that you can put right here, but we can start looking at your financial information a little bit different and set up some goals there.
Yeah, we can bring different goals to different committees. You see it often with quality. It's not necessarily here on the AIP. And we try to create those goals in which everyone across the organization touches at some point. We know everyone. Their work touches engagement. Also, it touches the patient experience. So we try to look for goals since all of the organization benefits from it. But to Dorothy's point, to each of these committees, we can have dashboards. We see Ashley presenting at the HR. So there can be a financial dashboard that is brought to each of the committees.
I think on Trent and on the Finance Committee, they have always focused on how do we sustain financial strength. But now we're saying, let's look at that and target what it's going to be, and that will be one of the measurements. That is how I see that some of the financial information that you want, you're tracking it, and we have a goal. So, but that would come from the Finance Committee.
And I would echo, too, that the staff also track these goals because they're held accountable to these too. And so patient experience, for example, at any organization, your staff all the way through your leadership carries patient experience, and it's part of their achievement as well because they're working towards patient experience and ensuring that patients have a great experience and therefore an optimal outcome as well.
Okay. Well, for example, this sets like the bonus for the whole workforce, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the point of the AIP. So the reimagined facilities section, no matter what we put in that, there may be 2% of the workforce that has any impact on that at all. So I'm wondering how that belongs in an AIP. Those are the questions I have for the next year. Is I would think all of the metrics here would be something that the majority of the workforce would have some input into so that we can get the desired outcomes. If we're putting metrics that are specific to one department,
No.
maybe that gets pulled out separately. But the reimagined facilities one, when I get the, be the best workplace and true north our patients, and there may be some other things that are global in their impact. But the facilities one is very few people here have any control over that.
RFPs, depending on what's going on in their area. So they do help develop those RFPs. They do sit in on the interviews. So I would say from manager up, from the leader side of it, there is opportunity for them to think about that as they are looking at how it is that we contract. Making sure that we use more local. We heard today are women, own businesses. So I hear what you're saying, and I agree.
We can redo that
there's
one.
opportunity for us to look for.
Look at that. We put that one on there because we wanted to monitor to make sure that we were actually meeting that goal, and we were not. We struggled with that one for a long time, and that is the one that is, to me, is kind of the directors and above that's working on that. But every last one of those others include all of the staff being a part of it. So on that one, yes, we can look at, and we can still monitor that. It just doesn't have to be on here, okay? All right,
Good point.
okay. Thank you,
Jill,
Jill.
thanks for stepping up after our COO left and doing all the extra work. It's not unnoticed, I promise you.
Okay, now that's all we have for open session. So what, we do have a closed session, so what I want to do is to end open session now, and then we'll go into closed session. I'm gonna do it at 1. That's all I have to do is knock on the door. And so everybody can, we should be ready, okay? at 1:41, okay? And we have one item that we needed to take some action on, so.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a recommendation that several pieces to this recommendation, but would make a motion that we turn the full compensation assessment over to the CEO and HR staff. Consider and move forward with the recommendations on adjusting executive salary-based compensation, that we move forward with reviewing draft revised AIP and direct compensation SERP documentation for the HR committee and board's further consideration, that we discontinue the long-term incentive plan in favor of an approved AIP in addition of a DC SERP plan, which will be presented through HR and ultimately for board consideration, and to freeze the government excess benefit account, but work with the actuary to determine the impact to current participants and bring back information regarding how to handle those individuals in connection with closing of the account.
All right. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed. Well, are there any nays? No. Motion passes unanimous. There being no further business, we are dismissed. Okay?